been a few days since Bengaluru-based businessman C.J. Roy has died by suicide, and investigations now deepening into what may have happened, the circumstances with which he died. C.J. Roy, a man who once lived a life of staggering wealth, is now at the center of a complex investigation involving business losses and political pressure, scrutiny by central agencies, all after his death. Often described as living like a second Vijay Mallya, C.J. Roy built businesses across Karnataka, Kerala and abroad. But behind that luxury, behind that luxury, we hear investigators say could be some financial distress. His financial health, we hear, was rapidly deteriorating. That's what's been suggested. A handwritten note has been reportedly found, yet to be confirmed, of course, by the police. But what we hear suggesting that this handwritten note suggests C.J. Roy was going under immense financial losses. It's now emerged as a crucial piece of evidence in the probe that gives this probe a whole new direction altogether. In fact, we hear that this note, which is, again, there's no clarity whether it's part of his diary, which he usually keeps. He holds a diary very dearly, and he writes a lot of his happenings in his diary. Now, whether this note was part of the diary or whether it was a separate note, we're yet to establish that fact. But he has certainly written some details that suggests that he could be going under financial losses. And the SIT team that's probing this, the Special Investigative Team of the Karnataka Police, are looking closely into what's been mentioned and penned down in that. And they're very cautious now while questioning. They're speaking to his family members and all. Of course, we understand that diary guiding them to probe in that direction. Well, remember, it was not left behind in that very room where he killed himself. They found it elsewhere, and that also suggests that this was a very meticulously planned suicide. Now, well, the contents, of course, are very significant. In the diary, we hear, this is again unconfirmed by the police, but sources tell us, Roy apologizes to his family, seeking forgiveness for taking what he calls an extreme step. He details how Confident Group should be run after him, naming successors, outlining responsibilities, also urging that long-time investors, employees and trusted associates should not be sidelined. The diary also reportedly, as per sources, records some financial details and the money that's been owed to him, payments made and some people who are faltered on payments, some business matters that he's penned down, and those who owe money to him. That's all now being cross-verified by the investigators, Karnataka Police leading that investigation. Sources say that Roy had earlier shared many of these details with his wife and had spoken openly in a recent YouTube interview as well about her involvement in his business affairs. The SIT has now begun recording statements of Roy's wife Annie, his children, his brother and senior company officials to corroborate the diary's contents. Now, beyond the diary lies the story of a sharp financial and personal decline. For nearly 6 months before his death, Roy was reportedly running at a loss. He was hit by some failed projects that really didn't take off, lavish spending, of course, and mounting investor pressure. Police say that he did not take bank loans. Instead, several projects were allegedly funded by politicians. Investments now are under scrutiny as well over the source of the funds. As projects failed and returns dried up, pressure mounted. A Kerala-based politician is said to have demanded the money back as well, even as the central agencies, including the Income Tax Department, began probing Roy's finances. It came like a double dent. So caught between the political demands and agency scrutiny, investigators believe Roy really struggled to really explain how his business was funded, and he wasn't able to basically corroborate and bring evidence to the investigators who were asking for it. The fear of exposure appears to have taken a severe psychological toll. This is what's been suggested by investigative authorities' sources, though they have not confirmed any of this detail, but this is what we hear from our verified sources on the ground. Investigation has also thrown up some very grey areas. There are contradictions in witness statements about Roy's movements on the day of his death. CCTV cameras near his cabin were not functioning. It remains unclear whether Roy met income tax officials shortly before the incident. Police have ruled out any forced entry into his cabin. There was no argument with anyone he had that day, but we hear that IT sleuths were there to collect documentation, but still no clarity on what the actual conversation on that very day was. Amid the family's allegations, it appears the family claims income tax pressure drove Roy to suicide. Karnataka Home Minister G. Parameshwara has urged caution, saying that it is premature now to draw any conclusion with this regard until probe is complete. Listen in.
ರಾಜ್ಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು SIT ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಆ SIT ತನಿಖೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತೆ ವರದಿ ಅದನ್ನ ನೋಡಿ ಆನಂತರ ನಾವು ತೀರ್ಮಾನಗಳು ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಅಲ್ಲ, ಈಗ ಅವರು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟಿಗೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಅವರು ಮತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗಳು ತಗೊಂಡು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹೊರಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ತನಿಖೆ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣ ಆಗದೇ ಇರೋ ಮುಂಚೆನೆ ನಾವು ಹೇಳಕ್ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದೇ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಕ್ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ.
Well, investigation now continues. Was C.J. Roy really driven to this extreme step by circumstances closing in on him, or is there more to this tragedy than meets the eye? Let me bring in Sanjay Sahai, former ADGP of Karnataka, and we also have a Bangalorean, Rajesh Sadhwani, MD Sadhwani Real Estate and General Secretary of Kriya. Thanks very much, both of you, for joining us. Rajesh, as a Bangalorean yourself, have you ever come across C.J. Roy? Have you interacted with him? And what more do we know of his business? The Confident Group, as a real estate person yourself, how much of a reputation did it have in the fraternity?
Thanks, Nabila, for having me on the show. Being a Bangalorean, I've obviously known of him. Unfortunately, I haven't had the privilege of working with him, but I have seen him at multiple real estate functions. We have a very close common friend in Mohammed. In fact, I wanted to go and pay my respects, but I couldn't attend the funeral because of my travels. I just got back in, and I will go pay my respects shortly. They did have a very good reputation. We never heard anything negative about Mr. C.J. Roy. Whatever we heard negative is only now, after maybe today, the first time since his unfortunate demise. So we are quite shocked, most of us in the fraternity, and that's the way you are finding out. We are finding out these things as well, but there's no clarity, as we don't know how much truth there is in the things we're hearing right now. So, just the investigation will throw more light on this as time goes by.
You know, this zero debt model, I'm not too sure, Rajesh, before I go to Sanjay Sahai on the purported suicide note, but the zero debt model, is it even sustainable in the real estate business?
It depends on the scale of the developer. When someone is starting off as a startup, and as they're growing, it is sustainable. But in the long run, leverage is obviously something every developer has to take in order to grow. If you see every large developer, all the listed companies, at some point they have been leveraged, and even now they continue to leverage as and when they need to. That's the only way you can scale up a business. There is no other way.
Mr. Sanjay Sahai, your take on this, where we're hearing so many different versions of a suicide note, and then you have, few other news agencies saying there's no suicide note. Sources on the ground saying there indeed is, and it's a 9-page note, or 9 pages of his diary that is filled with a lot of details of his business, and also how he's apologizing to his family to take the extreme step, and he couldn't probably bear the financial distress he was going through towards the end, and he had no answers to give because politicians had funded his business largely. He did not want to reveal their names, so ultimately he claimed his life. Now, but this is so tricky because, for us also as a channel to be reporting on this, while strong sources on the ground suggest indeed there was a suicide note, there's no revelation from the SIT on that as yet. How can a suicide note not be revealed? I mean, if there was a suicide note, it should have come out by now.
See, either there was a suicide note or there was no suicide
Yeah.
note. And if there is kite flying going on, I think deliberately it is allowed by SIT and the Income Tax Department for the kite flying to happen for reasons best known to them. What is written in the diary cannot be a suicide note to start with. And as my esteemed panelist has been talking about, so growth and zero debt model are inherently contradictory in business of any kind, which is capital intensive. So that was the first red herring from where the whole thing started. There are some 100 or 150 apartments which were sold last year, or might be slightly back. So there, I think there's a huge amount of discrepancy in the market value and at the rates which it were sold. There are also instances wherein some amount of money is paid in India and the rest has been paid in UAE for reasons of saving or evading income tax. So there have been red herrings all throughout. It is just that on the face of it, and I'm going only by documentation and whatever is available through very reliable print media like Deccan Herald and all that, because I don't have any issues in getting those sources known. So it has come through that newspaper, and there are a couple of other newspapers who have reported. So this is where it started, and this investigation is going on for quite some time, and this company has been on the radar, they say, for a couple of years. There's prohibitory orders on the on-site prohibitory orders, which is your scene of offense or scene where the whole evidence is available. So those prohibitory orders primarily means that the whole tranche of evidence or tranche of documentation available is so huge that the IT sleuths are not able to handle it in one go or in a couple of days. And that is why they pass the prohibitory orders so that that cannot be touched. It is said that the IT department was reaching somewhere towards the conclusion of this whole investigation, and the only thing which was left is, I think, a few Almiras and a couple of those things which were to be verified, and the pre-scheduled interrogation or verification or questioning of Mr. Roy was something which was left. Now the ED moves in. Now, when the ED moves in, though there is no FIR or the corresponding document of the ED, when the ED moves in, prima facie, it is generally proven that there is a case of money laundering, because ED moves in not with a new case. ED moves with only the proceeds of crime. I think this is broadly, I think, sufficient enough to start with. There are other smaller things which keep adding up to bring it to a situation where it is. One more thing which generally attracts the taxpayers and PMLA, ED types, and generally police also, is when you splurge. So when you splurge, it is generally presumed that you have huge amount of wealth, and that wealth, you're not providing sufficient enough of value, and you feel that it can be dispersed or splurged or in whichever manner. So it gives you an indication as to your attitude towards business. Corporate governance in India is very, very weak, and somewhere this umbilical cord between political business patronage and the growth of business, I think that has been intertwined since at least 70s in this country, if not more, since 70s. I can give you large number of examples.
Sir,
So
sir,
what
I
is
just have a
happening is,
question here. Well, there's so many conflicting reports coming in. Do you believe that if there is indeed a suicide note, it will surface? No matter what, it will surface?
see, no matter what, if SIT is doing its job, then the suicide note will surface.
What do you mean doing his job? It's a
Doing its job means it is their job to investigate.
no. Now it's a
And it is a whole team which is working on it. And when there are things in it is all around that there is a suicide note. So SIT in fitness of things, they need to come out in the open to say whether there was a suicide or not, or there was no suicide note. See, these investigative agencies and
do you believe the SIT will have to hold a press conference and reveal these details?
or communicate in whichever manner. It is only in India that in law and order situation, in investigation, in terrorist incidents, that the people who are handling it, they don't come out in the open and hold a press conference. It happens all across the world. Even in Iraq, it has happened everywhere, and the people who are in charge, they come in press conferences and open themselves to be hauled by the media and anybody else for that matter.
Right, right. Rajesh, a final word to you on real estate business not looking very lucrative at this point. Are we over that bubble, or are we still in a good space?
We are in a very good space, Nabila. Sales post COVID since 2020 have only grown year on year. If you see the big listed players now come from Bangalore, whether it's Prestige, Brigade, Purvankara, Shobha, so on, and now recently even Embassy have acquired or merged with India Bulls and now a listed company. You had the WeWork listing recently. Real estate is on the up and up, especially in Bangalore, where we are growing in all four directions. We're landlocked in CBD. There is no land left to develop on. We're landlocked in East Bangalore. There's no land in Whitefield left for developers to buy. We're moving on to Hoskote and Chikatirupati and so on. So the business is still booming. There is no bubble that's going to burst.
So CJ Roy, if he was alive, he could have really picked back the business.
Every developer who has got into trouble has bounced back. Every single one of them. In the last 30, 35 years, we've seen all developers have their ups and downs, including brokerage houses like ourselves. CJ Roy himself would have bounced back for
Very
sure. He would
tragic
have,
to
no
hear.
doubt.
Very tragic then that he decided to take this step. But I really appreciate both of you for joining us. Thank you very much. We will come back to revisit the story soon.